US President Donald Trump on Tuesday highlighted his economic record during a visit to Detroit, seeking to refocus attention on American manufacturing and efforts to ease high consumer costs. The White House is aiming to reassure voters amid growing economic anxiety among American households.
In a sprawling speech in Detroit on Tuesday, President Donald Trump boasted that he had rebuilt the U.S. economy in the span of 11 months, as he sought to refocus attention on U.S. manufacturing and his efforts to tackle high consumer costs.
Growth is exploding, productivity is soaring, investment is booming, incomes are rising, inflation is defeated, America is respected again like never before.
But higher costs for food and rent drove consumer prices higher in December, and job growth has been weak. Unhappiness over affordability played out in Reuters Ipsos polls last month, which found approval for Trump on cost of living issues was just 27%. And while Trump was in Michigan ahead of the Detroit Auto Show, the outlook for factories is grim. Employment fell nationwide by 8,000 jobs last month, dipping below levels seen in much of his first term. Aides have said that this year, ahead of the midterms, Trump is set to travel around the country to directly speak to voters about his economic accomplishments. However, Tuesday's speech, which was billed as economy-focused, saw Trump zigzag from one topic to the next, including immigration, former President Joe Biden, transgender athletes, and Venezuela.
Winning is a good thing. We're going to work with Venezuela. We'll make that country very strong again.
Last week, sources told Reuters that GOP lawmakers and White House aides, including Vice President J.D. Vance, were frustrated with Trump's focus on Venezuela. They want him to address economic and health care worries in an election year that may shape into an uphill battle.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump on Tuesday dismissed criticism from JPMorgan Chase chief executive Jamie Dimon over his administration's attack on the Federal Reserve, insisting the central bank is poorly run and should cut interest rates. On a call with reporters on Tuesday, Dimon said that anything that chips away at Fed independence is not a good idea, warning it could increase inflation expectations and ultimately lead to higher interest rates. Remember, President Trump has often criticized Powell's role as the chief of America's central bank, adding that his team was unnecessarily extended under former President Joe Biden.
Jamie Dimon said today that it's not a great idea to be chipping away at the Fed's independence. Do you think Jamie Dimon's wrong about that?
Yeah, I think it's fine what I'm doing. We have a bad Fed person. He was extended by Biden, and yeah, I think he's wrong. I think it's wrong. He's done a bad job. We should have lower rates. Jamie Dimon probably wants higher rates. Maybe he makes more money that way.
Meanwhile, the heads of several major central banks across the world issued a rare joint statement backing U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell after the Trump administration threatened him with a criminal indictment. Now, the move has drawn criticism from global financial lenders and even some members of Trump's own Republican Party. Take a look.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell received major support on Tuesday. The heads of many of the world's leading central banks issued a rare joint statement backing him. It was in response to the Trump administration's threat of a criminal indictment for the Fed chair. Powell is at the center of a U.S. administration criminal probe about the renovation of the Fed's headquarters. He called it a pretext to win presidential influence over interest rates. The heads of the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada, and 8 other institutions all backed Powell. They said he acted with integrity. They added central bank independence was crucial for keeping prices and financial markets stable. The statement said, "We stand in full solidarity with the Federal Reserve System and its chair, Jerome H. Powell." The US probe has already drawn criticism from the world of finance and some key members of Trump's Republican Party. Central bankers fear political influence over the Fed could hurt trust in the bank's commitment to its inflation target. This would lead to higher inflation and global financial market volatility. The US would likely export this higher inflation through financial markets since it is the world's top economy. That would make it more difficult for other central banks to keep prices stable.